It is really hard to believe that we opened our doors to scholars on August 25th, 100% remote. At that time, we said we had never imagined that we would start the year the way that we ended the year, virtually. And we are really proud of all of the work that we were able to accomplish during that time as we began to plan for the day that we could open our doors back safely. And we were able to begin our phase-in on the week of October 5th across all of our campuses. And during that time, we just made remarkable progress. And so I want to start off by just saying thank you to all of the families and scholars who adjusted rather beautifully to all of our new protocols, learned how to wear masks and keep them on in classes, really began to appreciate being in their communities once again, as we were really focused on ensuring that your scholars were and continue to be on that predictable path to and through college. Our attendance rates were up. In fact, just last week, Girls Park Bronx 2, our newest campus, had 3 days of 100% in-person attendance. And we were noticing that families who had struggled in the remote world were really just starting to get into those routines and find their balance and really thrive. And we learned a lot during that time. In fact, as we go to the next slide, what we know is that about 37% of our families, or 826 scholars across our 6 campuses, chose to have in-person learning for cycle 1. And there's about a waiting list of close to 200 families who were asking to come into our buildings in January when we opened up for cycle 2. It is with unfortunate and devastating news, as you know and learned last Friday, when we created our temporary pause and shared that with you. We really wanted to privilege certainty of our consistent learning so that we would not be beholden to a daily announcement by the mayor and the Department of Education around whether or not we could open or close our schools. It would appear as of 2 p.m. today that our fears have been realized when the DOE announced that the entire city will be closing schools through Thanksgiving. So what that means for us in the short term is that we are not changing our guidance. Our schools are still closed through the earliest would be Monday, November 30th. However, the DOE did not provide information, nor did the mayor this afternoon, on when schools could reopen. There are new ideas and guidelines around testing and what it means to reopen for schools. Once we know that, we will certainly share that with you, but that information is simply not known right now. But we know that we will learn more in the coming days, as we have from Friday when we made the announcement to close and move back to 100% remote through to Thanksgiving. What we can commit to you is that we will make a definitive decision about how we will reopen, when and where, no later than next Tuesday, November 24th, through our normal channels of communication, email, Kimbo, website, Facebook. Check everything. We will make sure that you have access to all of that information. There are some new expectations that we know will be coming down the pike that we wanted to preview with you, so that when we do reopen our doors, again, we have been able to prove that we're able to open our doors safely for our scholars. There is some new guidance that we wanted to share. The first is that on October 6th, the governor implemented new a microcluster action initiative that really addresses the COVID-19 hotspots by zone versus zip code. And this was collaborative between New York State, Governor Cuomo's office, and New York City, Mayor de Blasio's office. What we know is that New York City will be moving into the microcluster zone guidance. With that, that means that students and families will now be part of testing. We don't have specific details, but our recommendation as of today is that families become very familiar, and I think we're going to start dropping in the chat where, but families become very familiar of where to go to be tested, because what we don't know yet is whether or not there may be expectations on testing. What we do know is that students will be part of the testing protocols that our staff and faculty have been following. As you all know, our staff have been asked, including myself and members of the senior leadership team, to test on a weekly basis, as well as complete the health survey, the same health survey that you are filling out for your scholars, we are filling out to go into our buildings. Those items will continue. What will be additional, as you can see, is that there will be guidance around who and how we are testing students and families. One non-negotiable for all families to know is that opting out of testing for scholars will not be optional for families if you want to continue to come back into our buildings in person. That was echoed this afternoon by the mayor. We're sure that there will be additional guidance provided in the coming days that we just don't have right now. There are also learning partnership forms that we have asked all of our community members to sign electronically prior to coming back into our buildings. Our team is actually currently looking at those partnerships. If you have not yet completed that form, please know, which talks about attendance, work completion, independent reading, as well as other protocols for being in person. Please know that you should complete that form as soon as possible. If you're not sure where the form is, please reach out to your principals and DOOs. They can resend it to you. But again, this will be part of the non-negotiables, just like immunizations. This will be an expectation that families that are coming back into our buildings when we reopen have signed the learning partnerships, which outline all of the expectations that we need families to adhere to as we are planning to reopen our buildings. We just want to remind families that our travel advisory and our position on travel has not changed. If you've been following the news, you know that there has been increasing guidance around traveling out of state. New York State has some of the most stringent COVID response rates than any other state in the country and in the region. And so as we are talking about infection positivity rates that are about 3% right now, we know that other states are dealing with positivity rates of close to 50%, and even closer to home in our neighboring states are up to about 20%. What we want to make sure and strongly encourage is that scholars and families remain in New York City during this time. That's what we have always recommended, is what we've recommended to our staff just yesterday when we met with them. We are just reinforcing the expectations that we have had. We are also asking that scholars and families avoid large family gatherings. It has been confirmed that that is one of the sources where COVID and virus transmission are occurring. What has also been confirmed in the data is that schools are simply not the source of COVID transmission, that we can support students and staff in safely reopening. And when there is a case, as we have learned over the course of our opening, that we have the systems and protocols in place to really mitigate the spread and stop it. And so we want to make sure that families are also following these protocols. If you are planning a trip, please know that you have to follow, this is the governor's guidance on quarantining out of state. And again, and have a negative test. These are all guidelines from the government. I mean, it is the government, but New York State Governor Cuomo that we are aligned to and following. And again, we are learning and will share information as we learn that there will be increased expectations around testing for students and families moving forward. We know that meals are really, really important. We can share what the distribution is through Thanksgiving. Again, we are learning more information from the Department of Education around how or what that may look like should closure go beyond Thanksgiving break. But for now, pickup of Red Rabbit meals can happen from Boys Prep from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. until Tuesday, November 24th. Wednesday, November 25th would have been an asynchronous day where all of our scholars would be home. And so our building will be closed. And so Tuesday, November 24th, which is next Tuesday, would be the last day for pickup before Thanksgiving break. You can also pick up meals from any New York City public school between 9 a.m. and noon during the week. You don't have to go to your campus school. You can your particular campus. If you live in the Bronx, you do not have to go down to the Lower East Side to pick up meals. You can go to any New York City public school between those hours to pick up meals. And if you're looking for a site, I'm sure they're going to drop this in the chat as well. Here is a map that will help you find the closest location for pickup. In addition, we will have all of this information in our newsletter, which goes out tomorrow. If you are not getting our newsletter, you are missing out. Make sure you email support@publicprep.org to get on the list. There are some key upcoming dates, and what we want to convey here is that many of these dates are the same that we have communicated to you since the beginning of the year. Nothing has changed, but we want to make sure that you have access to them. On Tuesday, next Tuesday, November 24th, that is our drop dead date of when we will be providing an update on reopening. We hope that we will learn more information through the rest of this week that will inform our decisions to reopen. You must know by now that we take the health and safety of your scholars and our staff at the forefront of our decision making. And so we are trying to learn and adapt as we move forward. Thursday, November 26th and Friday, November 27th, we would have been closed for Thanksgiving break. There is no school for scholars. Wednesday, which is not listed here, Wednesday, November 25th is a half day virtually for scholars. So that would follow their normal pattern because they are typically half day of in-person instruction and asynchronous in the afternoon, but it is a half day that day. Wednesday, December 2nd and Friday, December 4th, family conferences will happen. You should be receiving information about how to schedule a family conferences. I know that teachers are working on report cards and sharing information with you and are looking forward to those opportunities to really talk about where your child is for their progress. And Friday, December 18th is the last day of school before winter break. These are all the same scheduled dates that we've had. We're just reinforcing that they are there. And just to remind everyone that we were always going to be 100% remote for all scholars and staff on Tuesday, January 5th. That is not changing. In terms of our next steps, and again, this may be one of the quickest town halls we've had because we do want to leave some opportunities for questions. Our next steps as a network, we will continue to monitor the impact of the long-term closure on the Department of Education on all of our schools in co-located and private space. What we know right now is that any of our schools who are co-located in DOE buildings, Girls Prep Lower East Side Elementary, Girls Prep Lower East Side Middle School, Girls Prep Bronx Elementary, Girls Prep Bronx Middle School no longer have access to their buildings through the duration of the closure. At this point, it would be through Thanksgiving break. If the DOE's guidance changes, they would continue to not have access to their buildings. What we know is that our private facility, Boys Prep and Girls Prep Bronx 2, that building will be underneath the state guidance for closure, which is the reopening, which is the micro clusters. We do not have any information on that right now. That is why we are going to share with you a final decision next week. But we do need to learn more about critical services and how that impacts both of those sectors. As we learn more guidance and criteria around reopening our schools, I just named a few. We've learned in the last 3 hours that there will be increased guidance around testing for scholars and families, that there will be changes in how we're thinking about reopening and closing. New York City is shifting to align with the state criteria of microclusters by color that everybody else in the state is under. As we learn more, we will share that with you. We just don't have the answers right now. In fact, we learn when you learn on the news. We're watching the same press conferences that you are watching to share that information. So we would really encourage families to continue to watch the news. It really is the fastest way to get information. If you have Twitter, follow your local elected officials, because they are paying attention and trying to share information. And know that we will update our community, as we've always done, as soon as we learn anything new, via email and text, no later than next Tuesday. The final thing that I would just say in terms of reminders, if you have not yet received, if you have not yet had a flu shot, or your child has not had a flu shot, this is a great time to protect yourself and your family. In addition, I would highly recommend that you become very familiar with where to go in the city to get tested for yourself and your child. And this is regardless of whether or not you're 100% remote or coming into the buildings. In fact, what we heard from Mayor de Blasio is his ask was that everybody get tested, so that we understand and know everyone's status, and we can support families and communities to really mitigate the spread. So again, I know that we've dropped those links in the chat so that you can look for your nearest testing site over the next couple of days. So I'm going to call on my colleagues, Michelle and Josie, to just voice over what types of questions have we received so far that we want to share out and trend. And again, if you have questions, please use the question and answer feature in the chat, and we will start to answer them as best that we can right now.
Sure, Janelle, I can start. And one was not a question, just a comment. And I think we'll echo the comment of how sad it is that we do not have our scholars in our buildings. We wholeheartedly would like them to return. We do think we could do it in a safe manner, and hope that the mayor and the governor can kind of figure out the right way to do that for our city kids. Our kids deserve a chance. We believe in the choice, and we want the choice to include in person. So thank you for that comment, and we echo that sentiment. The second question was about testing. Janelle already alluded to it. We don't know exactly what is going to be required for student testing. We do know if a zone was deemed yellow, that we are required to test 20% of that particular community in that school in order to remain open. That's why Janelle mentioned that if you want to do in person, you've got to be willing to have your scholar test it. So yellow zone means 20%, which may mean just, I don't know, 10, 20s, 30s, depending on which campus you are, test it periodically. So that's not 100%. The mayor mentioned something different in the press conference a few hours ago about requiring tests. Unclear as to what that is. So as of November 18th, we're clear on what happens in the yellow zone, but we're not quite clear about what happens in other situations. And we promise to make sure that we're very clear with our families. We are working every angle we know possible to make sure that we have access to tests, that we not only know where you can get a test, but if tests become available to schools to have and be administered by nurses, we will be fighting for that right for our schools as well. So I apologize, I cannot give you the specifics of exactly what's going to happen when schools reopen. We do know some, and we are certainly preparing protocols should we have to have students test. And then, so we have to report that information to the Department of Health and show that we are meeting those requirements in order for our schools to stay open. So those are a few questions. I'm going to go again. And if there's a specific question, and thank you, Mr. K. I saw one particular to your campus, around staffing or classrooms or something like that, we do ask that you reach out to your principal, because they are going to be most attuned to the staffing and class size and dynamics of rosters. So that's going to be more campus-based questioning. There was a question, maybe Josie, I can have you.
There's a couple of questions about materials for remote
Yes.
learners. I know there was one specific to a book for 8th graders from Girls Prep Bronx Middle School that Ms. Rodriguez is trying to find out the impact. And then Dr. K, I think you wanted to come on and answer a question live about math books.
I answered it live for that parent. I'm sorry.
Oh, great, perfect. So that
Hello?
question is great, perfect. So that question has been answered. But essentially, if you have questions that are specific to your child's schedule or your child's materials, please reach out directly to the campus. They'll be able to best answer that question. So reach out to the principal if the teacher's not able to answer that question for you.
There's another question about testing, and again, this is going to be regulated by the mayor and the governor, not necessarily public prep around the testing. So we are sorry that maybe scholars, it feels invasive to them, but in order for us to stay open and for the students to come back into the classroom, that will be required. The question is whether or not that it will be a nasal test or something other. Right now, the majority of tests are in fact nasal tests. There are two different kinds of nasal tests for those who have been tested. There's one that maybe more kind of a deeper nasal swab. It's a PCR test, and the rapid tests are a little less perhaps invasive. So I would recommend perhaps considering a rapid test. There are other saliva-based tests that are out there on the market. I'm not sure how accessible they are on an individual basis. So for right now, I would count on the delivery of the test would be nasal.
The only thing I would like to add to testing is we learned in reopening our schools, it was through our testing program that we actually learned early that there was an asymptomatic, I'm sorry. I was like, where is that coming from? My house. There is an asymptomatic staff member. And so it really is important for families to know that in order to really mitigate COVID, we need to understand everybody's status at all times. In addition to testing, and we've shared this information and talked about this with our staff, it also means that you are following all of the protocols outside of school. And so that means when you're going to the hairdresser or the grocery store, or you're out in the community, you're wearing your mask properly. And as you see with our scholars, that means covering both your nose and your mouth. It's not below your nose or above your mouth. It's really, really important that you are practicing social distancing, washing your hands frequently, and understanding with regular testing what your status is so that we can mitigate spread as much as possible.
There's a few about some scholars struggling in remote learning and perhaps what can be done. Josie, you want to give some guidance besides they should be reaching out to their teacher and principal, but maybe give some additional guidance there.
Sure, it seems like some are connected to Chromebooks, some connected to getting classwork submitted on time, and some just connected to focus. And we recognize it's not easy, especially if you had just started getting used to the in-person learning. And so we really go back to this idea of trying to create a quiet space within your house for your child and a consistent schedule. So making sure that that bedtime and getting up in the morning is consistent each day with the remote, having that schedule posted. Our goal is to try to be in person when it is safe to be in person. And so setting up those routines in the meantime will support your scholar, and then just keeping in really close contact with the teacher for tips and information and feedback on what's going well and what your scholar could do better.
I just want to thank our community as usual for sharing great information. So a shout out to Amir Medina, who just shared they went to Metropolitan Pediatrics to have their daughters tested with a rapid test, including the information. They also shared that if you are a veteran, you can schedule your core family unit to be tested at any VA location as well. This is the type of information that's really helpful to know. So if there's information that you know that we can share with our families, we are please all ears and open. We strongly believe it takes a village. We don't have all the answers, but we know together we are going to get through this. There are a number of questions about the transition back to remote, specifically on timing of assignments. Superintendent Carboni, do you want to talk through when are assignments due and our standards?
Yeah, so there's no change to the standards or expectations around student attendance when it comes to joining all of their synchronous lessons, joining all of their small groups. There's no changes to the expectations around work submission. Obviously, if you're having an issue with technology, being in touch with your school so that they know why an assignment is late. And then the third is just making sure that you really privilege independent reading. We know the research shows that if students are reading every single day, that they are going to become better readers, and it leads to academic achievement overall. So if you are, for whatever, struggling to get on the Zoom because of a struggle with a Chromebook battery life, text your teacher to know, and then get a book in your child's hand until you can figure out that next step.
Great. Dr. Kirkland, I know there's a question here about books for boys, and maybe you can go on to the Q&A and answer Ms. White about books. That would be wonderful. There is a phone number listed about high school applications. If you might be able to say your campus, I can have the appropriate principal answer that question as far as high school application timeline. I believe Superintendent Carboni answered the question about that there aren't schedule changes. This question's really about is there any changes being 100% remote? But I believe you just answered that one.
Michelle, I think the question about a schedule change around a lunchtime or 100% remote, in general, there are not, but that is a school by school. So for example, at Lower East Side Middle School, their remote start is at 8:30, whereas when they were doing the in-person, that 8:30 time was when students were also still arriving, and the remote and the start was a little bit later. So that's a school-specific question. Join a chat and chew, talk to your principal or your academic director.
Thank you. Again, there's a question about timing of advisory, and I suggest reaching out to your principal because I'm not sure what campus you're specifically asking about, but please reach out to your principal or identify the campus, and I can have that principal go on and answer for you. Okay, you have a scholar in girls prep middle and boys prep. So I can ask principals to kind of go on and try and address those specific questions for those parents. I have one from Lower East Side Middle as well.
Yes, great. As you submit those questions, it's always really helpful to know the grade and the campus. Hi, Crystal.
Absolutely. And there's a kind of a bigger question, which we do not have the answer on November 18th, but we are certainly pondering. Janelle, do you want to talk a little bit about, there's a question about, are there teaching pods available for families?
Yes, we're going to try to do an informal straw poll, but I'll talk to you a little bit about the idea and the concept. So we know that having our schools open has been a real lifeline for families, for our scholars. And as a family has already expressed, we are deeply saddened that we cannot have our scholars in person in our buildings. And this slide actually just is heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time, because it is really a sense of all of the things that are possible when our scholars are in school, when that magic is happening, that's just a little bit different than being 100% remote. Oh, good. The poll is all set. So let me frame this, and then we will actually do a little informal poll. We won't hold you to this, but just to gauge a level of interest. We are really thinking about how we can leverage our private facility to support all of our families in our public prep network, given that 4 of our 6 schools will, as we currently know it, no longer have access to their buildings until the DOE reopens. We are in the early stages of that idea, but we do know that other charter networks in the city have done that. And so we are already reaching out to them to learn from them, as well as thinking about what were the lessons that we learned in reopening, as well as talking to school leadership teams. And so with that, we are trying to think about what, if possible, if Boys Prep could be, the current Boys Prep, the building could be used to support families who really need it, whether it's because, as we've already heard in your Q&A, you know that your child is learning best in person versus remote, or you know that you are an essential worker and are going to be required to go to work and work longer hours, or because the supports that you have with your child being in school is really allowing you the opportunity to continue with your own livelihood, with a job, so that you can support your family. And so it's in that spirit that we are thinking about that. We don't have an answer, as you heard Michelle say, today on Tuesday, November 18th, but it is a conversation that we have been engaging in this week, given all of the uncertainty, given the amount of scholars who have been coming to school, and what we know that we really want to provide moving forward. So I think Mr. Group is going to go ahead and drop a poll. Oh, great. Which says, which school or schools do you represent? Oh, yay, you get to choose multiple campuses this time. We know that that has been feedback from our previous town halls. I'm so excited. And whether or not you would be interested in a public prep learning center. Again, not binding, really just trying to get a pulse on where people are. That poll should be up in front of you, and you should be able to respond. We have about 269 participants on. I know there are some staff members, but we should give some time to respond.
I'm looking for some other questions while we're finishing the poll, Janelle. And there is one, just to clarify, any school that's open, but that is run by the DOE right now will be closed as of de Blasio's announcement. So what that does is that prohibits us from accessing our co-located spaces, Girls Prep Lower East Side Elementary, Girls Prep Lower East Side Middle School, Girls Prep Bronx Elementary, and Girls Prep Bronx Middle School. So we don't have an option. We have to, at that point, go along with what the mayor has stated. So what we're hoping is that there'll be revised guidelines where we are balancing safety with science, and hoping that it's not just this 3%, and that we move to the microcluster protocols that the governor has set in play. But that's not up to us. That is our desire, because we believe we can do it and run our schools safely.
There is a, can we actually go back to the microcluster slide for a second? I just want to clarify something. There we go. If your scholar is in private space, whether they're in a charter school or a school, I think I see in the comments, run by the Department of Health, if they're not in a Department of Education building, the announcement by Mayor de Blasio has no impact on whether or not their school is open. It has an impact on our campuses because 4 of our schools are co-located inside of DOE, New York City Public Schools. And as of tomorrow, they no longer have access to their buildings. If all of our schools were in private space, we would be having a different conversation, which is we would be following the New York State microcluster zone guidance. And that is the guidance by which we are thinking about how to support repurposing our private facility of Boys Prep to support the larger needs of our network, given that close to 40% of our scholars have chosen to come to school in person, and how we can continue to support families. We don't have any answers yet. We don't have a schedule. We can't tell you who's staffing it, but we just wanted to informally understand if there was interest in something like that as we are moving through plans. I see someone has sent me some results. Okay. So again, informally, 3 out of 4 families have said yes, they are interested in a learning center of some sort on this call. That is very helpful information. It's about 125. Yes, I'm counting the children of the families, the children of staff who emailed us, who are panelists right now and can't vote in the count. So we're at about 125 of the participants, 45 who said no, thank you. So again, this is helpful information as we're thinking about planning moving forward. We will probably be sending out a similar structured Google form just to lock in people's interest. This will be available to families who are in cycle 1, who are currently and have currently chosen an in-person option. At this time, it would not be available to families who opted to opt in January at this moment. So also want to clarify which groups of families we are talking about right now through the end of the year.
There's a question on assessment calendar for middle school. And I know that, I don't know if it's 100% solidified, especially with this news, if we've had a chance to readdress that. I know we haven't had a chance to readdress that, so I'm not sure that we have that calendar right now, but I imagine we can shortly.
Yeah, certainly we can. And then at the middle school level as well, there are school-based assessments such as unit assessments that are not on the network-wide calendar. So those will need to be delivered directly from the schools.
So reach out to the principal for those specific assessment calendar. Okay.
Yeah. The parent identified themselves as a seven.
Yeah, girls prep. Yes, I see that.
It's great. Thank you for that.
Take an answer.
So just to clarify, there are a number of Boys Prep questions. There are no schools that includes Boys Prep or Girls Prep Bronx 2 that is co-located in Boys Prep that are open before Thanksgiving break. What we are going to communicate with you no later than next Tuesday is if and how we are opening the Boys Prep building post-November break. That is what we are talking about planning for. Right now, we don't have the answer. Every public prep school is 100% remote and has switched to their remote schedule. Actually, has switched to remote instruction. I should not say remote schedule because I do know that there are differences based on campus that have already been surfaced here as well. But every school right now, regardless of whether or not you're in public or private space, is closed physically through Thanksgiving break.
Thank you, Joanne, for thanking us for not waiting for the DOE to close. I want to say that it was a heavy decision for all of us, and we couldn't predict. We can look at data, but we couldn't fully predict. And we know it was difficult for our families. So thank you for actually believing in us to know that we're always thinking about doing the best for our scholars and our community. Yeah, and the question is, if testing for kids goes forward, will you notify us what days you plan to do it? Yeah, so we don't know that we can do it on campus yet. We do know that we will provide as of today where kids can get tested. And if it's the 20% for a yellow zone, I'm just going to make that assumption for right now, you'll be notified from your school that you have X amount of time during that week to get your scholar tested. So we will definitely communicate. It's randomized. We just have to have X number of done. We'll make sure that we give you enough time to allow you to get the test and get the results back for us to provide the information to the Department of Health. If in fact it is available at our campus and we can have testing there, yes, we would definitely let you know. We would need a waiver from a parent, and we would then let you know what days those are going to happen.
So again, just to be clear, we believe that there will be increased requirements for testing of students and families when we reopen. We do not have information about what that will look like. So we can't tell. There are a number of questions about how often, when, who. We do not know. What we know right now is that if you are in certain colors, that triggers expectations around testing. We also know that the mayor voiced something different. So that means that the city has the ability to increase guidance around what the requirements are. As we learn more, we will certainly turnkey that to everybody so that you have the information in a timely manner. We're just previewing now. Again, to get ahead of that, you should know where is the local best place to get tested. I see some questions about hours based on folks' work schedules. There are lots of different places that have different hours for testing. This is the time to really research and figure that out for you in the same way that our staff has had to do. There are places that are open on the weekends. There are places that have later hours. So this is really the time to do that research now so that you're ready should that be an expectation post Thanksgiving.
And the other thing we do, we download all of the Q&A and chat. So if we're not addressing something specific, like we hear the comments on homework and scheduling, we take those in and make sure that we're sharing those with our school leaders. I don't know that if there's anything we need to address directly, Josie, around homework or whatnot, or again, our expectations of setting the bar high, but I think you will take those back to the school leaders.
Absolutely. The school leaders are here as well on this call. And so they've been diligently responding to some of the individual questions and are always eager to make sure that family voices are heard. So thank you.
Michelle, do you just want to repeat one last time the type of test, the PCR and the rapid? There's a question from Tina McGee about the type of test that staff members have taken so far.
What the staff members have taken? Okay, our staff members, we accept PCR or rapid tests, and we also are rolling out a pooled saliva batch testing for our staff on campuses that just started last week. So we didn't get to do it this week because of our announcement on pause. But we certainly assure that we're using tests that have the highest accuracy possible, which we know is not 100. But right now, prior to this week, our staff was able to take a rapid test or a PCR. They're predominantly nasal tests, but we accept both of those.
What I am going to ask principals to get ready to voice over is, when is your campus-based chat and chew? We'll go in order of campus because there are a number of campus-specific questions, so it might be helpful to just reinforce where people can go to hear this information and learn next steps because we are probably not going to be able to adequately answer those concerns at this moment. So we usually start oldest to youngest, Girls Prep Lower East Side Elementary.
Yes, our chat and chew for Lower East Side Elementary School is 4 to 5 p.m. tomorrow. We've shared the link on our Facebook page, and we will be sending it out via Kinvo tomorrow and sharing it on the Facebook page again tomorrow.
Thank you, Principal Adam. At Girls Prep Lower East Side Middle.
Sorry, my mute's been delayed today. Our chat and chews are weekly on Wednesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. And so we will be reconvening next Tuesday, actually, before the Thanksgiving break, since next week is a holiday. So generally Wednesdays 5 to 6, but next week it will be on Tuesday prior to the Thanksgiving holiday, 5 to 6.
Thank you, Principal Strong. Girls Prep Bronx Elementary.
Hi, good evening, everyone. We had our chat and chew this afternoon at 12. Every Wednesday at 12 o'clock, we have our chat and chew. Ms. Strong actually gave me a good idea about maybe having one next Tuesday, since Wednesday will be gratitude luncheon day. So I'll send a message to families, but every Wednesday at 12 o'clock since March 13th.
Thank you, Mr. K. Girls Prep Bronx Middle School.
Hi, everybody. We had our chat and chew today at 12 p.m. as well. Mr. K and I don't usually have them at the same time. Girls Prep Bronx Middle School is usually on Thursdays at 12, but I have an all-day meeting tomorrow. So we had it today, and Ms. Morris and I will post the video from the chat and chew this evening so that you can watch it back. And for any families that do work during the day and are not able to join us at 12 p.m. like Ms. Galpy, please do watch the video back and feel free to set up a time if you want to talk and touch base about anything that you see in the slides or the video.
Boys Prep here. Ours is normally Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Because of the holiday, we're going to do ours on Tuesday at 12 o'clock. Tuesday, 12 o'clock.
Thank you, Dr. K. Girls Prep Bronx Elementary 2.
Good evening, families. Our chat and chew will be this Friday at noon, and we will post the link on Facebook, and you'll receive a Kinvo as well.
There's just a few comments about making sure that are asking that we don't have conflicting chat and chews for those who have scholars in more than one campus, which I think we try to do, but we'll take another look at that and make sure that our principals get that message. Again,
they're also recorded, so you can rewatch the videos as you heard the principal share. I know it is difficult, but we will certainly try. Certainly for next week, I just heard multiple campuses trying to have it on Tuesday. So at this point, I would say go to one and listen to the other, but we will certainly look in the long term. I'm not going to promise that we're going to smooth that out, but we will certainly take in the feedback.
I want to reiterate that we're giving you the information often hot off the presses as we know it, and we'll continue to have transparent communication. Cannot stress enough. Please make sure you're getting our newsletter on Thursday. Take the time to read it. Anything that is more urgent, we also Kinvo, and if you can join in our Facebook groups, please do so. Our community council does an excellent job of sharing information, ensuring that you know what is happening in the school, and many of our school leaders, all of our school leaders, post updates there as well.
Similarly, there are lots of questions about what will happen when we reopen. We do not have the answers, but we are committed to thinking about some of the concerns that you have already voiced and sharing that information with you as soon as we are ready and able. We take very seriously the gifts that you have given us, which is taking care of your babies, who we think of as our babies as well, and really making sure that they are cared for in person and remotely. And so we definitely don't want to diminish the trust that you have built in us, and really appreciate that. Again, we are here for you. We've been able to answer close to 80 questions tonight in the chat and also live. But at this point, we don't have any new information that wasn't shared. This is being recorded. We will share with you the recording via all of our channels. And tomorrow we are back again to have a Spanish version of our town hall, so that we can make sure that we are communicating to the entirety of our community all of these important messages, as we are all trying to navigate 2020 and all that is within in a way that is showing the resilience that we know we all have. So again, thank you so much for your partnership. Please stay healthy and safe, and give your scholars all of the love that we are feeling and sending to them each and every day. The moment that we can open our schools safely, we will do so. And we can't wait to welcome them back and welcome you back as partners. So thank you so much for attending tonight, and we are here for you should you have future questions.